flagged for possible radicalization while in prison. Jennifer Eccleston at the ABC News Foreign Desk in London.
The House could vote next week on the American Health Care Act, a Republican plan to replace the Affordable Care Act. And this weekend, Vice President Pence is back in the role of traveling salesman. He's trying to drum up support, this time in Florida.
The Obamacare nightmare is about to end.
ABC News political analyst Kristen Soltis Anderson says he may be playing to a friendly crowd.
Donald Trump is extremely popular in many of the districts that these most conservative members come from. This Freedom Caucus group, they're the ones that are almost always making the trouble for congressional leaders. If they're on the wrong side of, say, Paul Ryan, that's one thing. They can weather that in their district. If they're on the wrong side of Donald Trump, that's a very different story.
The plan still faces considerable opposition, including from some Republicans. For the second time in about a week, someone has tried to jump a White House fence. The Secret Service says this time the man only cleared a nearby bike rack, but he told authorities he had a letter that he wanted to deliver to someone in the Trump administration. Naval investigators say the number of people connected to a scandal involving nude pictures of female Marines posted on a private Facebook page is growing, and so is the number of women who claim they've been victimized. You're listening to ABC News.
Hiring is the most challenging part of my job. It's really hard. The searching, the sorting through resumes. Most people don't have the right experience.
We started using ZipRecruiter about 3 months ago. Right from the start, you could tell it was going to make hiring a lot easier. One click and my job was posted to 200 plus job boards, all the top sites.
All of the candidates came to my dashboard, and it's easy to compare them. Thumbs up if I liked them, thumbs down if I didn't. No emails and attachments, printing up docs, phone calls, none of that.
And I couldn't believe the number of great applicants we got. I had the person we needed within 1 week. I don't know how we hired before ZipRecruiter.
Whether you're looking to fill one position or 20, find the best candidates with ZipRecruiter, where your job is just one click away from 200 plus job sites. ZipRecruiter, the fastest way to hire. And right now you can try ZipRecruiter free. Just go to ZipRecruiter.com/ABC Radio. That's ZipRecruiter.com/ABC Radio. ZipRecruiter.com/ABC Radio.
Secretary of State Rex Tillerson says the U.S. and China must work together to defuse the threat of North Korea's nuclear program.
Because China's stated policy is denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula, we renewed our determination to work together to convince the North Korean government to choose a better path and a different future for its people.
Tillerson in Beijing for meetings with China's leader. It's part of his first official trip to Asia. A bishop in Sicily has passed a decree against the glorification of the mafia.
A Sicilian bishop has passed a decree forbidding mafia members from becoming godfathers in Catholic Church baptisms. Bishop Michele Penisi says his ban is an attempt to stop the mafia from corrupting the Catholic term godfather by applying it to crime bosses. He says it lends an air of religious respectability to the mafia. The bishop passed the decree after a local priest allowed the son of one of Sicily's most notorious mobsters told to act as godfather at a baptism. Megan Williams, ABC News, Rome.
Less than 3 months into Philadelphia's new tax on sweetened drinks, beverage makers say the measure is hurting sales so much that they have to cut jobs. City officials say it's just a ploy to get the tax struck down. Some supermarkets opposed to the tax are making a statement by printing out the added cost on receipts and on store shelves. This is ABC News.
In your business, you trust people who time and time again get the job done. At Indeed.com, we deliver 5 times more hires than any other job site, according to independent research. That's why over 3 million businesses use Indeed when they're hiring. Because getting the job done matters. Right now, we're giving new users a $50 credit to post a sponsored job on the world's #1 job site. Claim your $50 credit at Indeed.com/credit. Terms, conditions, and quality standards apply.
Daria Albinger, ABC News.
From the KMET Weather Center for Beaumont and the Pass area, as we kick off the weekend, it'll be sunny and breezy with a high of 79 today, with winds to 25 miles an hour. Tonight, it'll be clear, hollow 56 with winds to 20 miles an hour. We'll have a sunny, breezy Sunday with a high of 80 with winds to 25 miles an hour. Monday should be a sunny day. We'll kick off spring with a high of 73 as winds gust to 25 miles an hour. For Redlands, we'll have plenty of sunshine and a high of 82 this afternoon. For the desert cities, we'll have sunny skies and a high of 90. I'm Rod Tanner for Smart Talk 1490 KMET.
The Banning Beaumont Cherry Valley Tea Party meets every Tuesday morning at 8 a.m. for informal breakfast and discussion. And they meet each month on the second Thursday at 5 p.m., all at the Farms House Restaurant in Banning. Listen to interesting speakers, learn about our Constitution with our free classes, enjoy friendly discussions, and informal dining. Come join us. For more information, call Glenn Stoll, 951-316-3843.
The following is a paid program. Views and claims expressed are those of the program producer and are not endorsed by this station. Opinions expressed are not necessarily those of radio station KMET, its management, employees, or affiliates.
Welcome back to Constitution Radio with Douglas V. Gibbs right here on KMET 1490 AM, KMET1490am.com. And, of course, you got that app for your smartphone. Make your phone smarter. Get the KMET app for your phone. And we are on Facebook, facebook.com/Douglas V. Gibbs. You can also find KMET on Facebook. Do so. KMET has all these great programming, and sports. Let's see, real quick, let's run down the teams, if you don't mind, Sean. We've got the Lakers, we got the Angels, we got the Kings, we got the Rams. That's the professional sports. Who else do we have?
Oh, we got the Clippers also.
Oh, the Clippers. Yeah. Well, the Clippers are sort of like the Chargers. You know, people forget that they're there, but they're there.
Well,
you know.
Yeah, they're actually the only basketball team in LA that has a winning record. So.
Boys, talk about just nailing the nail into the. All right. So, and then we have some college teams also that we have on KMET.
We do. We have the Redlands University football, and when it's football season, and basketball season, we have Cal State San Bernardino.
Wow. So KMET is your home for sports, good talk radio, and the U.S. Constitution on Constitution Radio with yours truly.
I also left out. We also do carry Beaumont High School football.
Oh, you do. On Friday nights, I take it.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, wow. So KMET is, so here in the Pass area, folks, KMET is your center, your hub for all things that you need to know, be it sports, commentary, or the U.S. Constitution. Alex, how are we holding up, sir?
Well, I'm finding this show to be another spectacular demonstration of intellectual acumen.
I will take that as you're enjoying it. Let's start the top of the hour with your book that you've been going over with by Michael Straight. What's the name of the book again?
It's called After Long Silence. He was silent as long as he could maintain the fiction that he wasn't a communist traitor.
So now, did he join the communist movement? Was he a communist, or he infiltrated the communist movement?
Well, he claims that he's just an innocent bystander, you see. But when he went to Cambridge, that whole university setup there was loaded. His tutor was a major communist figure. He became very involved with them. As I say, Joseph Stalin personally assigned him the task of infiltrating Wall Street and the FDR administration. He was one of the establishment. He was of the privileged, moneyed people. He says, I turned to another assignment, helping he was writing speeches for FDR purely on the basis of his pedigree. He was an advisor to FDR, and he just got out of college. He says, I was helping Mrs. Roosevelt as she struggled to maintain the ties between, this is a quote, between the administration and the radicals in America. The radical movement was made up of industrial unions, the American Labor Party, the American Youth Congress, and elements of many other organizations. Within its loose structure, the Communist Party held positions of power. It followed Soviet directives, and as I had feared, its entire thrust after the Nazi-Soviet pact was signed in 1939 was to undermine the Roosevelt administration and the Allies. The American Youth Congress was the organization with which Mrs. Roosevelt was allied. a communist caucus working undercover and in many guises was able to manipulate the Congress in ways that Mrs. Roosevelt could never comprehend. I talked about these control agents. His was Mr. Green, who came from Russia and manipulated these people. They got recalled to Moscow, and they got their heads blown off in the basement of the Lubyanka prison. Interestingly, some of the American spies couldn't take it, and they said, we're not going to do it anymore. But there were actually other spies who continued to collect information to transfer to the Soviets until the Soviets had groomed another control agent to come in. They knew that the guy they'd been working with had been murdered, and yet they were so devoted to the cause, mindlessly devoted, that they waited for a live one. There were others like Elizabeth Bentley, who or Whittaker Chambers or Boudin's. There was a whole slew of American spies, Americans who spied for the Soviet Union, who got sick of it, who couldn't stand it anymore. They went to the government, and the government did everything they possibly could to delegitimize, to rationalize what was going on. She named 11 officials at the State Department. They were dismissed or allowed to resign as a result of her revelations. But no, this is a quote again, no corroborative evidence was obtained from those whom Miss Bentley named, and no indictments followed the grand jury's investigation. In other words, it's the same pattern we see time and time and time again then, is the State Department covered for these people. If they could, they destroyed the evidence. And in another book called Blacklisted by History, it shows how Joe McCarthy would come up with the evidence. The State Department, the president, whatever, that's where presidential privilege came from, was Roosevelt declared presidential privilege in grabbing the evidence and hiding it. It was.
And we have a media today who doesn't talk about any of this. I mean, we are really the only show that I've ever come across that talks about these things.
Well, let me just throw in, not a plug for The Enemies Within, but in that movie, we talked to several intelligence people, one of which is fairly well known, Phil Haney. He broke on the scene a year and a half back, where he was not arrested, but his last year in his intelligence position, he basically was in a room, an office by himself. They took his gun away and all that, so he was just kind of embarrassed sitting there, and then he went off into retirement. But he had files on terrorist connections, and all of those files that he had properly put in were all disappeared. And then he disappeared. Mm-hmm. And he and Mike Waller and a number of other people that we talk about, there's probably a half a dozen of them, all the reports that they have given in good faith about terrorist activities, all those guys are outside. They are no longer allowed to speak. They cannot do any contact with military or intelligence people that they used to train, and they were blacklisted. This is over just the last 2-3 years. So it's the same thing that Alex is talking about from the 30s and the 60s and the 80s. No accountability.
Nothing new under the sun.
That's right.
The leopard doesn't change its spot.
Right. As much as things change, they stay the same, right, Alex?
Absolutely. I'm looking here at the 1946 elections. The media today, who, by the way, are remaking all their movies. Everything's a remake because they don't know of any plot or subject matter that would be new.
You mean like Trumbo?
Like Trumbo, for instance.
And thank God for the comic book boys, you know. I mean, between Marvel and all the rest, I mean, between that and the remakes, you're right. There's not the original thinking that there used to be.
Hollywood could have a wonderful renaissance if they simply took these cases and put them on film. But they won't do it because they're on that side.
Yeah,
they're complicit on
goes
it.
against their narrative, right?
Goes against everything they believe in. Now, as an example, Alger Hiss had been an associate and protege of Felix Frankfurter. I mentioned the other day, when you find Felix Frankfurter's name, you're going to find Lillian Hellman. You're going to find Alger Hiss. This guy was a Red, no question about it.
Especially in 1948.
He had induced the Secretary of State, Dean Acheson, to defend Hiss. Acheson said, "I will not turn my back on Alger Hiss." Well, that's fine, except we have evidence has been piling up for the last 70 years. It's not a big surprise that Alger Hiss was as guilty as sin.
And what work of monumental proportions, Alex, do you put Alger Hiss most closely associated with?
The UN. He's the one who founded it.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Not only
United
that,
Nations. So United Nations was founded on communist principles, and we wonder why they're acting like a bunch of communists now.
And in pursuing these various figures, I've spent my life doing this, my adult life. I find that time after time after time after time, these communists, who we now know were in fact agents of the Soviets, Gustavo Duran. I'm just in this particular book review. There's this guy's brother-in-law. Michael Straight's brother-in-law was Gustavo Duran, who was a Soviet agent in the Spanish Civil War. He went over to the UN. Time and again, the UN is tied up with these communists. The only good. Go ahead.
I'm just going to ask you a question, because this is a thought process I've had with the current big media push about all the connections between Trump, supposedly, and Putin, and their involvement and Democrats' outrage over any Russian influence that might be on the Trump administration. That is really 180 degrees opposite. Going through enemies within and going through your experience, which party over the last 80 years has been infiltrated and controlled by the communists? Is it the Republicans, or is it the Democrats, or which one?
We've got statements from the principals involved in all this saying we have to take over the Democrat Party.
Why is it, do you think, the media isn't really looking at the control that the communists truly do have through the unions and through everything else?
They're in on it.
Instead of the trying to find connections. And the Democrats are outraged over potential communist influence in the Republican Party, but, they basically live in the same cauldron as with those guys. And it's very easy to be pointed out, and I don't know why Fox News and the other guys don't point out the fact of, whether it be Judy Chu, whether it be, all the congressmen that have gone over and visited Cuba up to 20 to 30 times. None of that is being reported at all.
They're reporting it strictly on terms of Russia. They never talk about the Soviet Union. They never talk about
Their biggest regret is the Soviet Union doesn't exist anymore.
Exactly.
That was their ally. All right, now I want to interrupt just for a second, because Pastor Elliot has pulled the mic closer to his mouth. I have a feeling he has something to say about this.
Well, I had a question. Who was the leader of the American Communist Party back in the 40s who said that he no longer needs to run for president anymore because the Democratic Party has adopted all of their policies?
Yeah, I remember the quote.
I remember
Who was
the quote
that?
too,
What's
but
that gentleman's name?
I can't remember his name.
But, and that was back then. And so if you think about what they've learned to do from that time forward to advance their agenda, you look at what's taking place today.
Well, these people they're like the Islamists. They take the long view. They're willing to spend 70 years building up their cadres in the colleges and the newsrooms, and et cetera.
And in the judicial system.
And the judicial system. And when the average American Joe Lunchbucket turns around and finds that his entire country has been taken over by these people, it's a big surprise. Nobody warned them. Nobody mentioned a word about it.
Now, here's the quote that Pastor Elliot brought up. It's Norman Thomas, and he said, "The American people will never knowingly adopt socialism, but under the name of liberalism, they will adopt every fragment of the socialist program until one day America will be a socialist nation without knowing how it happened. I no longer need to run as a presidential candidate for the Socialist Party. The Democratic Party has adopted our platform."
Well, I got a quote here from Michael Straight. He says the issue in the 1946 election was communism or republicanism. The Democrats lost 54 seats in the House. This prompted Clark Clifford and Harry Truman to create the loyalty program, which was hated by the left and has been smeared and cursed ever since. But they didn't believe in it. Truman said that it was a red herring. He only went into it because he needed to win elections. You got Michael Straight trying to walk both sides of the street. He says that he didn't actually turn any information over to the Russians except what he personally had written. Yet he met with these agents once a month. He ran into Guy Burgess, who was one of the Cambridge 4 or 5, depending on how you count, in Washington in 1950. And he assumes that Burgess had warned the Chinese that MacArthur was going to invade North Korea. Because he told the Koreans and the Chinese that was going to happen, 400,000 Chinese soldiers routed the troops commanded by General MacArthur. They were laying for him. They were waiting for him. Many Americans had been killed. And Michael Straight is saying, well, Guy Burgess is guilty of killing those Americans. No, Michael Straight is guilty. Straight knew what was going on. He could have revealed what these people were up to. He could have broken up the entire operation. But he didn't do it. And he's trying to claim that he's an innocent party. He is not an innocent party. In 1950, because the scandal was so serious, these two agents, Burgess and McLean, they defected to Russia. And there was banner headlines. Straight toyed with the idea of turning himself in, he says, but he didn't do it. Now,
all right, Alex, real quick, because we're at the end of the segment. Name of the book, name of the author, one more time.
Okay, it's Michael Straight, After Long Silence, and there's plenty more coming along. I must say that there are a lot of these memoirs that were published by people who, after a long career of treason, had no way to secure their retirement, so they wrote these books. And the information in them is absolutely amazing, and yet they sit in used bookstores on the shelf, ignored.
Right. Well, we've already had a couple listeners tell me they went out and got the book because of you. There's more coming, I'm sure. And when we return, the firing of Bharara, the snowflake who thinks voicing your opinion is rude, Donald Trump meets with German Chancellor Angela Merkel, and Geert Wilders fails in Netherlands, all during the next segment when we return. Help me fight the good fight. This radio program is funded by advertising dollars. So, if you are a business, add Constitution Radio with Douglas V. Gibbs to your business portfolio. If you are a listener, become a patron of the businesses advertising on this program. Without advertising, your weekend dose of truth ends. With more advertising, Constitution Radio with Douglas V. Gibbs grows, and we will be on the way to win the battle to restore the Republic. To learn more, email us at constitutionspeaker@yahoo.com or visit douglasvgibbs.com. franchiseexperts360.com. Tired of working for others? Want to regain your freedom and flexibility in life? Want to invest in a successful business model with proven results and unlimited earning potential? Then Franchise Experts 360 can change your life. Franchise Experts 360 is a franchise consulting firm. Franchise Experts 360 represents 400 plus franchisors from all different industries. Franchise Experts 360 will work with you to find the franchise business model that fits your budget and lifestyle. Whether you're looking for a home-based retail, mobile service, direct ownership, or absentee ownership business model, Franchise Experts 360 has a franchise that's right for you. Visit franchiseexperts360.com. That's franchiseexperts360.com to contact our office. Our Franchise Experts 360 consulting services are at no cost to our clients. That's right, no cost, as we are paid by the franchisors. Change your life, invest it into yourself, grow a successful business model, and live the American dream. Franchise Experts 360 is your key to success. Contact franchiseexperts360.com. The second hour of Constitution Radio is partly brought to you by the Bravas Corporation and the new documentary film, Enemies Within, based on the book of the same name by Trevor Loudon. I have personally viewed this movie and have met and interviewed the author, Trevor Loudon, and if everyone in this country saw this film and took the time to understand and apply its important message, this country would immediately begin to solve its problems, and its future would dramatically change for the better. This movie rips the mask off of over 100 members of Congress who are under the control of socialists, communists, and the Muslim Brotherhood, who are violating their oath of office to uphold the Constitution of the United States. They are actually working to undermine the Constitution of this country and to restrict the liberties of all Americans. In fact, based on their known associations, these members of Congress could not even pass a standard FBI background check to get a job in the local post office. And here they are in the halls of government. I encourage everyone to see this movie. It is available at enemieswithinmovie.com. You can rent it or buy it. Go to enemieswithinmovie.com and get your copy today. And then tell your friends. If you really want to understand why the Democrats do what they are doing, you need to know their masters. Learn who their masters are by going to enemieswithinmovie.com.
And now, back to our program.
As always, Alex Ferguson got us speaking pretty deeply about what goes on. Some deep thoughts on Constitution Radio with Douglas V. Gibbs, but always very honest and truthful. And you know what, Alex? I think we're the only media program, be it television or radio, that even talks about this stuff. What do you think, Alex?
I think that it's made me more paranoid. I think to myself, Obama's got this big organization going on. I don't know what he's up to, but I know that a guy like you or like me, we're not his favorites.
And with that said, Alex's address is, no, I'm kidding. Now, but you know what? If we're not being criticized, we're not doing a very good job. They're going to criticize us. We're going to come under attack. That's a part of what we do. And that's just reality. I mean, look at, how the left has responded to the Donald J. Trump victory of the presidency, and how violent and vicious the tolerant ones have become.
Well, Whittaker Chambers, he's the one that wrote Witness. He was a spy master himself. Was the first to go to FDR. He said that he believes that communism will win. It's got to happen, but he's not going to be on the winning side. He'd rather be on the losing side and stand with God and country. Good man.
Our forefathers were talking about some of that issue when they were discussing the fact that this society will only remain free, number one, as long as it remains a religious society in that day, referring to Christianity, and the other was that until the people recognize that they can vote themselves free stuff.
Yeah, the moment they figure out they can vote themselves. Well, see, that's the problem with democracies, pure democracies, and that's why our system is supposed to be a republic. And that's something we can get deeper into, but later. But it is one of the key principles of our constitutional republic, and one of the things I talk about quite a bit in my Constitution classes and all the other things that I do. For those of you who are curious about all of that, DouglasVGibbs.com. All right, Bharara. Let's talk about Bharara. After Donald J. Trump's inauguration, nearly half of the U.S. district attorneys tendered their resignation. Since the confirmation of Jeff Sessions as U.S. Attorney General, Sessions has asked the remaining 46 U.S. attorneys who served under the Obama administration to resign. This is actually pretty normal stuff, but apparently not. Not according to the media. Mr. Bharara, who was a district attorney in New York, refused to tender his resignation, so he was fired. Now, here's my question about how the media has been blasting Trump for firing Bharara and suggesting he did so partly because Bharara has authority over Trump Tower. Were the Democrats and the media as appalled in 1993 when President Bill Clinton made the decision to get rid of all 93 U.S. attorneys at the time?
We went through this scandal with George Bush. When Bush fired a bunch of lawyers, the newspapers
You know how many?
nuts.
You know how many he fired though? 8.
The newspapers went nuts.
8. It went nuts over 8. But they didn't care when Clinton got rid of 93?
It depends on whose ox gets gored.
Yeah, I remember back when the 8 U.S. district attorneys was fired by Bush, and anchor Charles Gibson promised that ABC would look at all angles tonight. You know, of course, he skipped the Clinton comparison.
Well, it seems to me that there's a bigger problem regarding this deep state, this shadow government, and
Right.
that is the government union. I talked about this last time. The idea that the government employees pay money into the union gives the money to the politicians. The politicians then give the union everything they ask for. Who is watching out for America? We can't fire these people. They tell us, oh, there's nothing you can do about the Veterans Administration problems because they have tenure, they have job security. The unions will fight you on it. That we can't do that anymore. There's got to be some ability of the people in charge to hold the employees accountable.
All right, let's go to Dennis on this one. Dennis, what's your thoughts about Bharara and how the media is going nuts over the firing of Bharara, but yet they were silent when Clinton fired all 93?
Well, it's like some of the other things we've already talked about today. I mean, it's just politics. There's no basis for it. To me, it's a non-story.
Well, you know, you go to Article 2 of the Constitution, who is head of the executive branch? President. So he's the boss, right?
Right, and like you say, what Clinton did, you know, set a precedent as well. So, again, it's just a matter of them crying over not liking the politics of it. It's not the principle, because the principle is known, but they hide that behind, you know, their outrage is probably it's misplaced. To me, it's a non-story.
Don't do as I do, do as I say, because it's better for their narrative.
Exactly right.
What really, if the average person looks at this, what they really see is hypocrisy.
Mm-hmm.
For example, you got to pass the law to see what's in it. Now, I want to see what's in it. We have a right to see what's in it.
Yeah, Pelosi. That's exactly what she said.
Well, I didn't want to mention her name, but didn't want to give her any more credit. But if we just look at the political arena today, it is completely filled with hypocrisy. And I look at hypocrisy as nothing more than lying to somebody. Mm-hmm. As a pastor, to me, if you're a hypocrite, you're lying. So, and I don't believe that I, as a pastor, should hold that word back for political correctness sake. Scripture says, don't lie. So if I say, you shouldn't misspeak like that, what am I telling people? I'm watering down Scripture. Scripture says, don't lie. So to me, when I look at political correctness, I look at it as lie in much of what it has to say.
Hemingway said.
There you go.
Hemingway said that the way to measure a man is to see how he acts under pressure. What the Democrats have done is they've gone into blatant criminality. This Flynn tape, where he's talking to somebody in Russia, for a government official to record that, Flynn's half of it is a felony. But to turn around and then release it to the public, these people have lost all touch of any kind of morality or decency.
What have we seen over the last 8 years? 8 years, pure lawlessness. Why are we surprised that we're continuing to see it?
Well, you got Eric Holder in contempt of Congress, and Obama acts as though it's an invitation to dinner.
Now let's go a little bit further. You want to talk about this hypocrisy here? I was in a verbal altercation last week. Couple of young guys, and conversation turned to medical marijuana and legalization of marijuana and all that. And I had made a comment that I believe it to be a gateway drug, and I know this from experience. When I was younger, I went down whatever direction I went down, and the second fellow says to me, "No, you didn't. You're lying. I can tell by the way you said that." And I said, "Well, legal," and I kind of ignored him. I said, "The legalization of a drug is going to have its pitfalls, and I mean, if most employers would not want their employees smoking weed, then why would we want to see it legalized for normal production or the general functioning and because it might hurt the general functioning of society? Now, are there medical benefits? Absolutely. Well, then let's treat it as such. Let's use those properties as a medicine or so forth. But for outright just use among the population for the heck of it, like cigarettes, well, no, I think it's very dangerous. And it was brought up to me, well, alcohol is more dangerous than weed. And I said, well, not necessarily. I have a beer. It's out of my system in an hour. I processed it. I have a joint. It's there for, a month. But anyway, when he called me a liar about whether or not I'd smoked pot, I said, hey, are you calling me a liar? And he says, and I quote, well, you're in politics. And I said, no, I'm in politics per se, but I teach the truth about the original intent of the Constitution. He says, well, that's your opinion. That's politics, and all people in politics are liars. Then as the conversation escalated, in short, he gets to the point where he tells me that by me voicing my opinion to them who disagree with me, I was being rude. So here's my question now, snowflakes out there, if you want to call in, and for my dear friends here on the air with me, is voicing your disagreeing opinion rude? And let me add to this real quick. He says, well, you're not going to change anybody's mind. Well, I'm not trying to change his mind. I'm having a conversation with a guy about my opinion. I'll hear his opinion. Maybe we'll learn from each other. That's fine. But I'm being told voicing my opinion, because it differs from theirs, is rude, and I need to be silent. Comments? Go ahead, Pastor Terry. I can see him leaning forward. He can't wait to get on this one.
Well, it's obvious that if we're going to follow Christ, we're going to have some differing opinions. But would this guy go up to Jesus and say, because your opinion is different than the Pharisees or the Sadducees or the scribes or the lawyers, because you have a different opinion, it's rude for you to express it, and therefore you should be silent? Is that an appropriate statement to make?
Well, freedom goes both ways, right?
Yes. Yes, it sure does.
Well, and Christ many times talked about the scribes and the Pharisees with a pause, and the first word he said after that was what?
Hypocrites.
Hypocrites. So
Right.
I mean, he was calling the way he saw it, and he makes the other statement about, give to Caesar the things that are Caesar and give to God the things that are God. So he recognizes that there are other forces. He didn't necessarily say it was wicked. But, we live in a world where there are different things going on, and you do have to be appropriate in your responsibilities. But he sure as heck was not for shutting people up.
No.
He was the master of free speech.
All right.
He welcomed that verbal conflict.
Absolutely. Okay, Alex.
One of the primary goals of the communists is to destroy American culture. American culture is built on the free expression and exchange of ideas. The primary institutions for this activity are colleges and universities. And we can see the Marxists, and I'm saying they're dirty, filthy dogs, who have taken over our universities and are convincing students that this postmodern philosophy, that there is no such thing as true and false, that your opinion is your opinion just as good as anybody else, whether you test it or not. We're going down a road to totalitarianism, and they know what they're doing. This is a plan. This is being followed, and as I say, Joe Lunchbucket, he doesn't have any idea this is going on. He thinks he's paying $50,000 a year for his kid to get a good education. He's paying it for his kid to be indoctrinated in Marxist-Leninist ideology.
Well, that's why I say that we shouldn't be patient with these guys, just like the courts. I would ignore him if I were the president. He's within his constitutional rights. He shouldn't suspend his constitutional rights while we go yet through more and more court cases and impeachment proceedings, whatever it ought to be. The fight is at hand, and we need to react immediately.
It's in the Republican Party where you find differences of opinion, where you find disagreements being expressed, where you find people that have ideas, and they're not just in lockstep with everybody else. And when you have that, when you have that lockstep agreement with everybody else, you have totalitarianism. It's when you have the free expression of ideas. It's when you have the right to give your opinion that you do not have totalitarianism. And what I see right now is I see one party that jumps around with lots of ideas, lots of disagreement amongst themselves, but that's constitutional. That's our republic. And then I see another party that walks lockstep. And that disturbs me for the future of this country, because if you look through history, every totalitarian government through history walks in lockstep.
Well, here's a great example, just this past election. You had 17 Republicans that decided to run. The first two debates, all 17 were on the stage. And they didn't all get the same time, but I mean, that's just, the way it is in a debate. Meanwhile, on the Democratic side, the liberal, free speech, give everybody the freedom, they had 5 guys running, very restrictive. Governor O'Malley, who was, I guess, kind of a prince of the party. I mean, he's a governor. He had election. He's running. They basically don't allow him on the stage. Everything was just between Bernie and Hillary. The other 3 candidates, they pretty well controlled. So here you got the Democratic Party silencing their own relative to running for office. And here the Republicans, have allowed different sexes, different races, anybody who ran a legitimate opening, all 17 were included. So we are inclusive.
The final paragraph of my article on this Snowflake, Cameron me for having a difference of opinion, I wrote this: voicing one's opinion is not rude, it's a part of freedom. Freedom goes both ways. You can't demand to be heard and then refuse to hear your opposition. That is not liberty, that's slavery. A commenter shortly after I posted that, a few hours later, wrote this, and it was anonymous: you are clearly a delusional human waste who lives in this echo chamber you call a blog. My response: thank you, Anonymous, for proving my point. After the break, we got one more segment. Tired of working for others? Want to regain your freedom and flexibility in life? Want to invest in a successful business model with proven results and unlimited earning potential? Then Franchise Experts 360 can change your life. Franchise Experts 360 is a franchise consulting firm. Franchise Experts 360 represents 400 plus franchisors from all different industries. Franchise Experts 360 will work with you to find the franchise business model that fits your budget and lifestyle. Whether you're looking for a home-based retail, mobile service, direct ownership, or absentee ownership business model, Franchise Experts 360 has a franchise that's right for you. Visit franchiseexperts360.com. That's franchiseexperts360.com to contact our office. Our Franchise Experts 360 consulting services are at no cost to our clients. That's right, no cost, as we are paid by the franchisors. Change your life, invest into yourself, grow a successful business model, and live the American dream. Franchise Experts 360 is your key to success. Contact franchiseexperts360.com. The second hour of Constitution Radio is partly brought to you by the Bravas Corporation and the new documentary film Enemies Within, based on the book of the same name by Trevor Loudon. I have personally viewed this movie and have met and interviewed the author, Trevor Loudon, and if everyone in this country saw this film and took the time to understand and apply its important message, this country would immediately begin to solve its problems and its future would dramatically change for the better. This movie rips the mask off of over 100 members of Congress who are under the control of socialists, communists, and the Muslim Brotherhood who are violating their oath of office to uphold the Constitution of the United States. They are actually working to undermine the Constitution of this country and to restrict the liberties of all Americans. In fact, based on their known associations, these members of Congress could not even pass a standard FBI background check to get a job in the local post office. And here they are in the halls of government. I encourage everyone to see this movie. It is available at enemieswithinmovie.com. You can rent it or buy it. Go to enemieswithinmovie.com and get your copy today. And then tell your friends. If you really want to understand why the Democrats do what they are doing, you need to know their masters. Learn who their masters are by going to enemieswithinmovie.com. Help me fight the good fight. This radio program is funded by advertising dollars. So, if you are a business, add Constitution Radio with Douglas V. Gibbs to your business portfolio. If you are a listener, become a patron of the businesses advertising on this program. Without advertising, your weekend dose of truth ends. With more advertising, Constitution Radio with Douglas V. Gibbs grows, and we will be on the way to win the battle to restore the Republic. To learn more, email us at constitutionspeaker@yahoo.com or visit douglasvgibbs.com. Welcome back, Constitution Radio with Douglas V. Gibbs, right here on KMET 1490 AM. I want to name a couple things real quick. Donald Trump met with Angela Merkel, the German Chancellor. Remember, he was very critical of her on the campaign trail because of all the Muslim migrants that have come into the country, and Germany's really been having problems with those migrants and terrorist attacks. Meanwhile, at the same time, Geert Wilders, which has really been criticized heavily for his quote-unquote anti-Muslim stance, did not pull it off in the Netherlands, but in response to him running, the Turkish minister said that Europe is headed for religion wars, despite his stumble. That's what the Turkish minister said. And then we've got right here in America, the Obamacare replacement bill. Though it passed the budget committee, there's a big fight over that. So we've got Donald Trump is fighting all these little wars all at once. And here's my first thought about how he's handling it. I don't think any other president could handle it in the way that he has or as well as he has. Because you ever heard water off of a duck's back? That's an understatement when it comes to Mr. Trump. You agree, Dennis?
Yeah, I mean, he has a personality and a drive, and he's been independent, for so long. He's comfortable in his own shoes. He doesn't need, sycophants. And
can't be bought either. Can't be bought. Can't be ordered around.
Yes men a lot. So, he just has to hang in there and go to battle for his ideas.
How about you, Alex? What do you think of between the meeting with Merkel and dealing with the Islam and the travel ban and the fight for Obamacare and all that? How do you think he's handling it?
Well, a couple of years ago, I wrote an essay in which I stated that the good Lord has given America the president that we needed in every instance. And you say, well, what about Obama? Obama was the bottom of the barrel. We had to hit bottom before we realized how bad things were. Trump.
So in other words, Obama was a part of God's plan as well.
Yeah. Same as
well, if
fake
nothing
was,
else,
you know,
the Lord can
or
always
Judas.
use this for bad examples, you know. So,
But when you talk about the hypocrisy, the student movement on campus in America, I was around when it started, and it was started by Mario Savio, and he called it the free speech movement. What kind of hypocrisy do we have now? You take that portrait of Harold Washington being removed by the police without anybody saying anything about it. That was at the same time that they had Piss Christ and a mockery of the Holy Mother Mary. The intellectual class.
Yeah, and the crucifix in a jar of urine, right?
Yeah, that's Piss Christ. And the intellectuals are all saying, oh, well, you can't censor art. But if it's Harold Washington with his bare butt hanging out, you can sure as hell censor it. Depends on whose ox gets gored.
Well, it comes down to narrative and agenda more than it does what's right, wrong, or in between when it comes to the law. Like I said earlier, like we said earlier, we have a Democrat Party that's become completely lawless over the last half of a decade, if not longer. I mean, really, we could say a century, but especially this last 8 years, we've seen a Democrat Party that has just become outright lawless. Nothing matters except for what fits their narrative. It goes back to the question I've asked before on this program. What's the answer to the question? And someone will say, well, what question? And I say, any question, any question. The answer is whatever benefits the Democrat Party the most at the moment, even if it contradicts what they said 10 minutes ago.
And they walk lockstep in it.
Right.
There's no one who comes forward and says, you know what? What you said 8 years ago does not match what you say today. There's nobody in that party that comes forward. They're marching lockstep,
Right.
and that is one of the, like I said earlier, it's one of the first signs of totalitarianism.
Well, yeah, because there's no individual thought there. It's collectivism, and collectivism. And someone says, well, isn't Christianity a collective thing? Because everybody's lockstep with Christ. I say, yeah, but it's an individual voluntary decision to accept him.
well, and there's how many different thousands of denominations within the Christian church. I mean, there is, the freedom.
But
to express
we all have
yourself.
one thing in common: Jesus
various
Christ.
various forms of worship does not constitute lockstep. They just have this in common, that Jesus Christ is Lord, Savior, and Son of God, that he was crucified for our sins, he was buried and resurrected in 3 days, and that's what we agree upon. And the way we worship him, that's where you find many differences.
And if we don't keep this country in God's hands, we're doomed to go through a very difficult period.
Well, Doug, when you were talking about the, both you and the pastor, about the narrative that they're in lockstep, and anything they do, this law, breaking this law, as long as it supports the narrative and promotes the cause, it's good. That reminds me very well of what I used to hear routinely about the Communist Party.
Exactly.
That they would do whatever.
Well, remember, the Communist
whatever
Party
it
also
to,
attacked
the ends
capitalism.
justifies the means. They could take this position today, a different position tomorrow. If they wanted to steal, spy, murder, lie, whatever, as long as the cause goes forward, that's good.
David Horowitz said that the Marxists have a saying, and that is, the issue is not the issue. The revolution is the issue. The issue we're dealing with today is simply another way to forward the revolution. And the one constant I've seen in the American left, this is why I don't talk to my leftist friends anymore. They hate America. That's a constant. When you look at the polls they've taken among the Democrats, they think that America is a negative influence on the world, that our military is the threat to world peace. Go down the line. That we're the exploiters, we're the evil ones. There's a constant.
So if the U.S. had no military at all, Alex, what would happen within 60, 90, 180 days?
We would all be stacking heads in our streets. It's like they say
we would be
Israel.
stacking the bodies, and those of us who are not among those bodies would be in chains.
It's like they say about Israel. If you disarmed the Arabs, nothing would change. If you disarmed Israel, there would be nothing but dead Jews.
Or as they say, if the Islamic nations in that area declared peace, there would be no peace. There would be peace. But if Israel declared peace, there would be no Israel. All right. Real quick, because we're running short on time here. President Trump's America First budget was released. I watched the complete unveiling and the discussions and the press conferences, and here's basically what I saw. Defense part of the budget goes up because, you know what, if you don't have a country, nothing else matters. And a few other things went up, but most of the things, when it came to expenditures, went down. When questioned about that, the response was, not that we're taking money away, we are finding a more efficient way of doing these things, and we're cutting out items that show nothing. They're not beneficial. Now, one of the first responses was, "Whoa, Meals on Wheels! You take away Meals on Wheels," and the response was, "No, we are reducing money to the states that includes what that particular program, but that's up to the states on whether or not to take that cut of money from Meals on Wheels or other things that just aren't working." Budget Director Mick Mulvaney was the individual. This is not a take it or leave it budget, he said. The message we're sending to the Hill is we want more money for the things the president talked about, defense being the top one, national security, and we don't want to add to the budget deficit. If Congress has another way to do it, we're happy to talk to them about it. He was, for lack of a better way of putting it, stellar in his presentation and his answering the questions. Real quick, Alex, let's give you first crack here. We got like 30 seconds.
Yeah, just look at Sesame Street. Sesame Street is one of the biggest money makers in American media, and they're saying they've got to have help. Look at Planned Parenthood. More than half the people in the United States are against what they do, and yet we're all required to fund it. The whole thing is a scam. You could think up good ideas to spend government money on all day, but the point is that in the meantime, we've got $2 trillion in upfront debt, and we've got a half a dozen different nations that are threatening to cut our throats, and they're telling us that we don't need the military. They're insane.
All right, we're out of time. We're out of time, Alex. So real quick, 10 seconds each. Plug yourself. Go ahead, Alex.
ConservativeCannonade.org. I'm telling you, if you haven't read it, you're missing out.
Dennis?
EnemiesWithinMovie.com.
And I will be speaking on July 2nd at the First Christian Church. Terry Elliott, tell them where it's at.
We are at 701 Egan Avenue, Beaumont, California. Let me say that again, 701 Egan Avenue, Beaumont,
and yours truly
California.
will be the speaker on July 2nd. Remember, God bless America. God bless you, my friends. United we stand. Combined we kick butt. We will see you next week right here on Constitution Radio with Douglas V. Gibbs. I won't be here. We're going to have some guest hosts, but don't worry. Same great stuff. Alex will be here. Thanks for listening. See you next week.
Used to take a female soldier hostage. More from ABC's Lama Hassan in Paris.
Heavily armed special forces and emergency vehicles responding to the attack. 8:30